Excellent. So let's get started here with just some intros. I am Nai G Coach. That is Nai G Coach. Here we have
Jaini Jaili.
And Zaini Dimas.
Can you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves as well?
All right.
Mitchell?
All right then. I am Nai G Mitchell.
Did you get him?
Let's try it again.
Say again, Mitchell, because now we see your face on there. That's good. Go ahead again, please.
All right. I'm Nai G Mitchell.
Excellent.
And Nijai Infinity.
Excellent.
Oh.
Great.
You all set?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this weekend went well. Our field missions are yielding good data, and we're getting.
I actually don't think I was introduced.
Yes, you were.
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
So, this weekend went well with the field missions. We'll keep going forward with that in the coming weeks. And then Jailene also was doing some technical stuff, upgrades, as well as some more of the flyers. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so I was just working on some optimizations that we had talked about during the brainstorming session. One, I was making a black and white version of the ebook, so it's available to the people that have those Kindle Paperwhites, and the tables, the colored tables don't really come through that well. So a black and white version of it. I'm gonna put that up probably by tomorrow. Also working on. I haven't put the hyperlinks to the terms within the Kindle ebook, Mike, that we had talked about. So we would be able to cross-contextualize. I'm holding off on those until we get the Pro converted Kindle. That I'm working with that third-party service provider to get done. So once I get that, then I'll do those kinds of enhancements to the Kindle, so we can interface with it more. But I was actually also working on the flyers. I can show you guys. I added the Cerebrals flyers to the flyers that we already had available, because we want to be able to have flyers for all the interpretives. So let's see here. Sure. These are the flyers for the field. And so these, you guys have seen, these are the general, this is the general flyer that we give out. And then we give, if we have a soft read on them, we give them a mojo card too. So we had the Naiji, we had Nijai, we had Shinai, and Jaini, and Zaini. But since then we've added the Zinai, the Naizi, and the Nizai.
The Nizai
that one, yeah.
that's a Nijai.
Oh yeah, that's the picture. Okay, so I still, okay, thank you. And that's why I didn't order it today, because I purposefully said, I was like, okay, I want to take a look at this again tomorrow when I'm fresh, before I actually order it. Because there's always like one little detail. So, but I'll be ordering those. But yeah, so I'll be ordering that tomorrow. So we're gonna have flyers for all the interpretives, and yeah, that'll be great.
Thank you very much, Ellie.
Yeah, and the one last thing is, you know how we had talked about having collages on script uploaded and set to private, and then we're gonna put links on the Kindle ebook that will link to those collages. So when it says like Nijai females, it'll link to the Nijai female collage. and so we'll, basically we'll have a collaging solution, something that links the book.
Privacy thing that gets around copyright issues.
Copyright, exactly.
Excellent.
So
That's that breakthrough and the YouTube not recording on this, both are really huge breakthroughs. Excellent.
Yep.
That's good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because now we can leverage the collages while keeping it controlled. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And
Also, another thing that you added, Jilene, I don't know if we mentioned this, but you had an Excel version of the Rosetta Stone of the Human Soul.
yes, you're right. We added an Excel version, so it's going to be a
few people really like
table that's easy to reference. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very useful.
Yeah. Then one more thing. The last thing is that related to the flyers. So I use Vistaprint, and one of the things that came up in the brainstorming session was to have a storefront that had the Podlair brand standard material. So like our flyers and the business cards and whatever else we want to put up there, like T-shirts, mugs, notepads, and so on. So for those who are doing their own local Podlair missions, they can order flyers, like the brand standard Podlair brand standard flyers through the Vistaprint storefront, and have those, to go out into the field with. So I'm going to be setting that up this week. So we'll have that.
Cool.
Excellent.
Is that everything, Charlie?
Yes, that is everything.
Great. Okay. Mike, Infiniti, we'll
Yes.
turn it over to you to go through your reaction to Start of the Week. And like before, we'll let you go by section, and you can add whatever thoughts you want, and then pause at the end of any major section so the rest of the team can chat about it.
Yes.
All right, take it away.
Oh, okay. I'm just looking over my notes at this point in terms of. I got most of the cues that you mentioned before. Again, well, let me just step back and find.
Like I said, this is great for your experience, but also it's good to just read out what your experience was and then pause at the end of a section, because it might stimulate a lot of good thought from the other practitioners.
Yes, that makes complete sense. Okay, so last week's vlog was about Christine Adams, about Jaini Christine Adams, and all right. So I'll read what I wrote before. So this week's Mojo Reading vlog presented by Coach is on Jaini Christine Adams. Since she was one sample in which neither Jailene, Ademus, Mitchell, nor I got correct in our sample quiz last week, Coach felt that she would make a great study since we were essentially choosing me alpha mojos for her rather than her actual mojo, Jaini. Thus, most of Coach's vlog related to how her specific maneuvers differed from the analogous maneuvers of a Nijai and Nizai. Okay. In retrospect, I probably could have seen that her mouth region comes out at me more dominantly than her eyes, signifying a discerner lead. Also, her eyes carried a gauzy, meshy look, which is almost a Jaini trademark. I think that I put too much emphasis on the effects that her eyes gave me, and while I do think that I noticed the Jai/Z quite directly, which as an Nijai has obviously an enormous effect of familiarity to say the least, all this pulled me towards Nijai rather than Jaini. I also think that I might have been affected by her general with-itness, which made me think Nijai rather than Jaini. However, with-itness and Jaini can 100% go hand in hand, and that alone is clearly insufficient evidence to choose Nijai over Jaini. Okay.
Excellent. And this is the stuff we covered in last time's vlog session?
Exactly. Yes.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. To me, 3 cues really stood out in terms of demonstrating that she is in fact a Jaini. The first is that Jai heaviness that went right up beyond the brim line straight into her eyes. It looked like it added weight to her eyes and even gave them a bit of a pseudo-closed look. total Zhai. So that's number one. Number two is that amazing cue that Coach noticed of the Ni plus Z double barrel interspersed with the Zhai resonating and closing of the eyes. Usually those two cues will come out typically in two different instances, and especially so for a Ni Zhai who either would remain in objective Ni plus Z mode or would channel inward into Zhai, but in a manner that lacks the Ni plus Z double barrel. So it's basically, so it's like two different responses. One is an objective response of Ni plus Z, and the other one is a little bit more of a subjective channeling going inward of Zhai. As Coach nicely mentioned in the vlog, those two cues are pretty much at opposite extremes of the subjective-objective experience. So why would they necessarily be interspersed, especially within a Ni Zhai? I know that in my own responses, when I'm in double barrel mode, I feel very action-oriented and in the moment. However, when I am in a more poignant, soulful Zhai moment, I'm almost taken away from the moment in a sweet reverie of some sort. Totally different responses. However, for Adams, she actually closed her eyes in heavy Zhai, smack dab in the middle of that double barrel. To me, this screams Zhai Alpha, since although the double barrel is taking place, it is actually not as native to her in terms of pod powers as a heavy Zhai would be. Outstanding observation, Coach. So that was number two. And then number three is...
Go ahead and we'll pause after number three. To do a little chat.
Okay, cool. The third is something that made a ton of sense to me, but I'm not sure that I ever heard it in the way Coach described it. Basically, if a Ni Zhai does a Vi check, since Z is on the same modulation side but on a higher priority pod power than Vi, it is not uncommon for Z to accompany Vi. However, by having Z accompany Vi, Zhai will naturally decrease proportionally. So for Ni Zhai, Z plus Vi can cause Zhai to drop. That's the key point here. For Zhai Ni, it is a bit different. When a Zhai Ni does a Vi check, since Z is a lower priority pod power than Vi, it will not be as common for Z to be included, although it still can at times. Thus, by Z not being included, Zhai can still play an important role during a Vi check. This interplay of Zhai plus Vi with a sprinkle of Z articulation is precisely what was observed in Adams. This implies Zhai Ni over Ni Zhai. Another really insightful observation.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes.
I'm glad you're able to see those things, and I think you'll find that as you note them in her, that you'll be able to see it easier in other ones of that kind of riff.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
Then from Charlene, Demas, and Mitchell, if you guys want to just add anything, what I'd like to ask you is basically, when you're trying to distinguish between the two ad-ROMs, is there anything that you tend to do, or just anything that you can think about? That comes a lot, the experience of trying to separate two ad-ROMs.
Mm.
I think for me, I first thing I kind of try to look at the difference between like the energy in the eyes more versus more energy in the mouth, and sometimes that can yield a lot of data.
Popping.
Yeah, and that can yield a lot of data sometimes.
Yeah.
Or the gesturing, of course,
Yeah.
that's a big one that
And
jumps
Charlene, when you're
out.
talking, you should have the screen on you. When you use this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might actually just do it automatically.
I don't think it does.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah. So in any case, the another thing that I look for also that seems to be a good indicator of the difference. Something that's more easily notable is the gesturing. So the Franzi with the Zhai Ni versus the Gumby of the Ni Zhai. So, how about you?
I do it several ways. Usually, if I feel like I'm between two ad-ROMs, then the reason will be some kind of physiological thing that's may seem like there's blur zone. For instance, if it's like a Ni Zhai who happens to look kind of long, or particularly skinny, so you have to like look extra hard to see if that actually is going to be either that or start looking elsewhere. For that, energy on the eyes, that's a good one too. But also, the Nijai have more caginess, where as that's the more integral part of the peak pathway, starting with Ni and going into Jai.
If you can't think of it, it's fine. I'm very curious to that point, because one thing that Infiniti mentioned was that this Shiny was a bit throwing him because of her downness.
Yeah.
How do you set general like downness from that kg of a Ni Alpha?
Downness and kg.
Because I think we would agree that
It's still,
that Shiny was
okay,
down.
because she's down, but she still has energy that's kind of centered around the calmness of equilibrium. So whenever she kind of goes in for something, but you could see that she begins by setting herself and then kind of reacting. And then when it's in that reacting, then there is kind of, she actually does, have some kind of brassy Z for Shiny. But it's not going to have as with the Nijai, because they could sometimes have like brassy Z too. I'm not sure how to explain it, other than they usually this is used for Nai, but it is kind of become more broken rhythm to their style.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's really good actually. I like that a lot also.
Could we click on Mitchell and see if he'd like to contribute anything?
Yeah.
Mitchell,
I definitely have something to contribute. I mean, I definitely agree with everything that's been said so far. And one thing I was just sort of thinking about in terms of distinguishing, particularly Shiny and Nijai, is that because it's related to the discernment lead thing, but it's not just the mouth energy, but also how it goes up like into their whole face. You could even see it. And the Shiny do this thing like with their eyebrows.
Yes.
They're like this imperious flexing thing. It's hard to explain. I can't really do it without like kind of.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's that tautness.
Exactly. And all Shiny do it. And Nijai, there's more like a kind of loose caginess to their eyes.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, in my case, it just, I mean, you never see it going higher. It only goes up, up to here, really. And then it's like the eyes, it just doesn't go up.
Yeah.
Well, let me smile. It's just not hitting that higher point.
And then you look at Jylene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
me and kind of up into this area.
Yeah, something you can choose like Chinese. You can make like just a small mouth movement, like a point or whatever, and there'll be these little dimplings
here.
up in
That's
the
amazing.
eyes, and so it's a.
They're just like more clenched by your expressioning in general. They just move with it, like in a rhythm with it, not apart from it.
Good point.
Yeah,
Very good point. I like that rhythm thing that Mitchell said there, because there is a rhythm thing, and the knee keeps a faster rhythm, and with the Nijai, the Nijai has to keep up with that knee. But with Shiny, it's the opposite. The knee is there to actually help feed where the equilibrium is at.
Yeah. So my being is like always resonating with something, and then bobbles along. Yeah.
Totally. On that, there's actually a physical one that I tend to note a lot. It's subtle, but once you note it, I find it's one that I go to quite a lot, particularly like as Adimus mentioned, when you're dealing with one that's like a Nijai, the long face, or a more compact Shiny.
Yeah.
So they're like, they have, say a Nijai with longish fingers, or a Shiny with shorter hands. Like if you were looking for the fronzy, just the structural, say, what do you call that, ratios, height to width kind of stuff, that can feel confusing. But one thing that's always there is the viscosity. And there is a distinct difference in the viscosity between all inverse relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can see that, it's one of the main things that tells them apart is that she was very down, but there was a viscosity when she did, and I believe this what added that calming quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that height? The language is that heightened viscosity.
Sure.
Cool. Excellent. That was great, everyone. Thank you. Mike, please continue.
Yeah. Okay. Too many windows open. Hang on one second. Okay. As you will see, I still have questions regarding Okay, so I have questions regarding the going home versus the going underwater differences in Jaini versus Nijai, respectively. However, beyond this, I am now able to see how Christine Adams is, in fact, a Jaini, versus, and hence a subjective ADROM versus a Nijai and an objective ADROM. So that's all I had to say in terms of what I affirmatively got, and then we can go through the specifics of the few things that I didn't get.
Okay. He said that we can go through the specifics of a few things that
Confusing?
yeah, were confusing.
I mean, really, there are two cues that kind of go at the same thing, and then there's a third that goes in a different direction. So,
can you actually clump those two together?
For sure, 100%.
Cool.
I mean, they're different in time, but I can tell you when those two time stamps are.
Yeah, we don't really need to look at more just what was confusing.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, I can easily clump them. So basically, what happens is you're saying that she's going home rather than going underwater. And what I noticed was that it happened for such a tiny snapshot of time. And so I'm asking myself, okay, so it happened for such a tiny amount of time, maybe she was comfortable going home. How would I know, other than the fact that maybe in that snapshot she was completely, comfortable with going home rather than going underwater?
Very good question. Okay, so two things on that is subtlety and continuity. So it's a subtle cue that you'll be noting, and the context I was noting it from is one of continuity, which is there was something that was consistently on, and then there was a quick shift from it. That's important to note, as opposed to going from a vacuum and then seeing a cue. I'm actually seeing a dip or a transition in an ongoing rhythm. So it's almost like hearing a song and you hear a beat skip, and that catches your attention. Okay.
Gotcha.
It catches your attention because you're actually listening to the song, and then all of a sudden there's a little something. Okay.
Yeah.
So the subtlety, let's get to that now, is talking about the layers. We talked about a bit going up and down, perception, the logic-based discernments, values-based discernments in the mouth, and then we talked about whether or not the mouth pops first or the eyes pop first, and that kind of gets a bit into this terrain hierarchy, which one comes out more forward into the environment. All right, that's very important now to answer your question, Infinity, is this is why it's critical to kind of build stages. And what I can work on is one that you can do now. You said you were able to see the gauziness, the pointed gauziness quite well now. That's more than
totally. Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay, this will help it make sense. And you note that the Nijai does not have that gauziness.
Right.
Good. Okay.
I mean, for the most part, I can tell. Once in a while, there might be a pose that confuses me. For the most part, though, I can tell that difference.
Right.
Yes.
We're all working on our accuracies in every sample, but that is something that the general's popping for you more.
Absolutely.
Okay,
no doubt.
Because kind of like doing geometry, once I know a person can see something, I can use that as a given to go to the next higher level.
100%. Totally agree with you.
Okay, so now I want you to visualize that. In fact, you don't have to visualize technically. You can actually look at Jailene right here, but visualize you a Nijai as well, which is she has that veil of poignancy. Okay?
Yes.
I now want you to consider that veil of poignancy to be water.
Okay.
All right. So that means right now my fingers represent the gauziness. Because of this, she's already underwater.
Yeah. There's a barrier. There's a layer. There's like a membrane.
Right. There's a critical difference because we're talking about going home or going underwater. If you equate the gauziness veil, also with the demus, same thing with the unflappable gauziness. If you equate that to the water that I'm referencing in the going home or going underwater, subjectives are already underwater. That's the gauziness you're seeing in the towers.
That makes a ton of sense.
Okay, so here's the gauziness. Ready? Now she closes her eyes. Nothing really changes.
Correct. Underwater. It's just more underwater versus less underwater.
Right. Okay. Now the difference is if she was a Nijai, okay. I'll show
Can you
Mike.
apply to me?
Yeah, I was just saying how to do it, but actually I have to do it myself. So say that I'm a Nijai. What's going to happen is, do you see this veil of poignancy? You see that, Mike?
I'm trying to. Yeah.
Just my fingers. I'm not a Nijai.
Yeah, fine. Okay, yeah. I mean, there's a barrier. There's like
Right.
there's a layer.
Right, but I'm a Nijai now, so I want you to see what I'm doing.
Okay.
This is the native position of Jai veil of poignancy on a Nijai.
That makes sense.
The water runs underneath the knee
I
eyes.
see what you're saying. Yes. Okay, so we're basically looking at this in terms of 3D depth in a way, where you're kind of going deeper. And now I basically just penetrated my head through the layer of water,
Right,
rather than having it in front of me. Is that what you're basically trying to say?
And I'm saying that's baseline.
Got it. Yeah, totally.
Now watch
I get
that.
that.
Okay, so this is what's going to happen to you, Infiniti, when you close your eyes to go to Jai. The water will roll in on them of your subjective power. The veil of poignancy will come on you heavy as you go into the Jai.
Right. It's and that's not the normal state.
Right, and so if you can register that gauziness, the gauziness of a Nijai is under the dancing eyes, and so their gauziness generally comes over when they close their eyes.
That makes sense.
And you'll see kind of like a weight going on their eyes, a little uncomfortable. There will not. It's very subtle, but it won't be there. She is not going to demonstrate an uncomfortability of water rushing onto her eyes. And that's because, like a Demas, her discernment power is gauziness. It's already there. So now she's closed her eyes. She was already underwater. Nothing changes.
Exactly.
Now, to see this in mathematical reverse, it applies also to...
of course.
Going the other direction, which is... what you saw with the mic is, you naturally are like this, Mike. And then you go to your Jai, close your eyes, it'll go over.
Right. In this case, it's the exact opposite of where it would basically where it would come out, and that's totally different. That's
right. And this relates to the
I get it
that we saw before on Christine Adams, which is we'll see it where she'll look out of sorts. Because we talk about going home like it's a subjective thing, but it actually goes both ways. We don't sometimes mention as much of the objective, but we should. It's equally important. Is you'll see it when she does double barreling or jutting. Go forward. And when she does, you'll actually see her pushing through. And it is, you can feel like the points still weighing, and that's the viscosity.
Is that why she's still kind of doing a Jai movement, even though she's double barreling? It's sort of a compromised scenario to it's not compromised, but you know what I'm saying. It's somewhere
a combination. And also when if she continues to jut forward, it'll have that languidness because the Jai is actually holding it back. And so it's almost like a mask getting stretched. More like this, like push forward, Darlene.
That's cool.
Like that. The Jai never ever leaves. And then she goes, and that's why she can do a Jai blink like Christine Adams did. And that's because her Jai is right here. It's always right there.
It's home base. It's home base, so it's always going to be dominant, even when you start going outward. Exactly. I get that.
So I think if you in your mind with your knee and Z, if you focus on that geometric, like you're talking about, of going forward in the plane as opposed to going up and down with stuff, this is much more of a forward energy or back energy. And
I get it.
And this relates actually to hoodedness. Perfect, Mike. This is great.
Oh, good. Because hoodedness is also another thing that we could talk a ton about, because there are unfamiliar things.
This is why you see how things build on each other.
Awesome.
You said you're able to see the gauziness in Jai in general.
Yes, I can.
That is one of 8 versions of hooded eyes.
Right.
If you can see the chilly gauziness.
Yep, it's going to be different.
That's another one of the hooded eyes. So the gauzy is actually also adapted hooded.
Oh, that's what. So that's really what hooded is sort of defined as.
Yes.
Like
So
this.
for
This.
all towers, they actually have a gauzy hooded, and then the hunters have a perch. All 4 hunters go into their perch, and that's where their hoodedness comes from. Make sense?
Okay. Yep. Different type of hoodedness.
Exactly. So now you're kind of pulling on a thread. Now that you can see the gauziness some in the Zhiny, you may be able to note the gauziness easier in a Ziny, because sometimes the Zai is a little hard to see. But your lens now has awoken to the gauziness of Zhiny.
I mean, with that said, and being at level 2, I'm just getting exposed to the Ziny world in that sense also. So that's something that's going to emerge, and it already has started, but it's going to.
Oh, totally. And this is no pressure for performance. It takes as long as it takes.
Totally.
Yeah. What I'm pointing out, though, is simply where you can step next. Kind of solving any kind of mathematical problem, you have to find some sort of given. And once you have a given, you can work yourself another given and then start stepping. All right.
That's
so
right.
when you can see a Zhiny gauziness, that will open you up to seeing the gauziness of other towers. If you can see gauziness in general, you're actually seeing part of hoodedness. You may be able to start seeing hunter hoodedness. And then, to get to your question, when a Zhiny closes her eyes, you can say she's going home. You know why? You already can note the warm, gauzy hoodedness. If a person is hooded, when they close their eyes, nothing really changes. They're already
right.
Hooded. Closing your eyes is basically like the most hooded you get. But if you're already hooded, you're just like extra hooded.
I mean, just think about the term subjective versus objective. I mean, you're going to be subjective. You're going to be subjective when you have the hoodedness, but you're even going to be more subjective when the eyes are closed.
Totally.
I mean, it's totally subjective. There's no two ways about it.
And something that Demas mentions often is that to get certain kind of mathematic principles, you have to be able to observe the variable being discussed. So this is very important here. Like, so that's why I was very pleased that you were able to see the gauziness, because that means you're actually able to see a portion of the area you're questioning. You're questioning about basically what